Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And this week we are doing all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films. And today we are doing the 2014 action adventure comedy sci fi film Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Here is your trivia question for today. Splinter bribes the Turtles with a special cheese pizza. How many cheeses does it have? The answer will be at the end of this video. So at the beginning of this film, we meet April O'Neil, played by Megan Fox. So April at this point is just a regular everyday reporter who is mainly handling small local news. We also get to meet her cameraman, Vernon Fenwick, played by Will Arnett. April, who has decided she no longer wants to do these small news pieces, is chasing after one about a group called the Foot Clan. She actually chases them down into a subway and unfortunately gets huddled in with a bunch of other hostages. Luckily, April and the hostages do get saved by a group of vigilantes who seem to be able to just jump in and out of the shadows. April ends up chasing down the vigilantes and finding out something interesting. They are, in fact, giant mutant ninja turtles. April is allowed to go free, but without any of her evidence of the turtles. She, of course, decides, though, that she has to go tell her boss about them, to which her boss decides to fire her. April then decides to go confide in someone she believes can actually do something about this, and that's Eric Sachs, a scientist that used to work with her father. This, of course, ends up being a terrible decision, as Sachs is actually working along with the Foot, and more specifically, with the Shredder. Eventually, April meets back up with the Turtles, who take her down to their lair to meet their master, Splinter. Splinter is then able to fill in the gaps of what exactly happened and what their origins were. April ends up discovering that her father, who worked along with Eric Sachs, was killed by him. And she is actually the one who named the turtles and Splinter. And as Splinter is beginning to explain how the mutagen changed them and how he began to raise the four small boys, a bunch of foot soldiers attack them in their lair. Oh, also Shredder is there with power armor. During the fight, Splinter is wounded badly, and most of the turtles have now been captured. They are brought back to a facility where their blood is being drained to make some more mutagen. So now it's up to April, Vern, and Raphael, who is the only remaining turtle, to go in and save the day. The question now becomes, will the turtles be able to be freed in time to go and stop Shredder from dispersing a cloud of mutagen over New York? The director of this film is Jonathan Liebsman. The producer was Michael Bay. Unfortunately, I think this movie falls under the same curse as The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, what I mean by that is Henry Selick was the director for that film and Tim Burton was the producer, but everyone always treats it like it was Tim Burton's movie. Same with this, is I feel that Liebsman was the one who created it, but Michael Bay usually gets the credit for it. Apparently, Brett Ratner was actually up for the director's seat for this movie. There were apparently a few movies that were used as inspiration for this one, including The Amazing Spider-Man, Fist of Legend, and The Raid Redemption. The original working title for the film was just Ninja Turtles. Apparently it got quite a bit of backlash, so they did change it to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And speaking of the Turtles, they did something very interesting this time around. They didn't go with animatronics like the first live-action films. Instead, they did motion capture suits, with most of the cast being the voice and the body. The VFX team for this movie had a lot of fun creating what the turtles looked like. In fact, they incorporated some of the facial features of various actors into the mutants' appearances. For instance, Leonardo is a combination of Tom Hanks and Russell Crowe. Raphael is a combination of Russell Crowe and Clint Eastwood. Donatello is Leonard Nimoy. Michelangelo is Bill Murray, and Splinter is supposed to be Toshiro Mifune. Now, as for the actual actors who played the turtles, Leonardo was done physically by Pete Plozek, the voice was done by Johnny Knoxville, Raphael was done by Alan Ritchson, Donatello was done by Jeremy Howard, Michelangelo was Noel Fisher, and Splinter was physically portrayed by Danny Woodburn, but the vocals were done by Tony Shalhoub. Megan Fox played April O'Neil, and they even had her wear a yellow jacket to be an homage to the original jumpsuit from the cartoon series. Also, Megan Fox wasn't the only actress up for the role of April. There was also Jane Levy, Anna Kendrick, and Elizabeth Olsen. Will Arnett did a great job of portraying the character Vern Fenwick, although normally he's more of a pompous ass, while Arnett was able to make him at least a little bit more likable. Whoopi Goldberg was actually very excited to be part of this movie. She's actually been trying to be in a Ninja Turtles movie ever since the first one in the 90s. Her daughter is actually a huge fan of the cartoon series, so she was elated to be able to play the gender swapped version of Byrne Thompson in this film. Taran Killam is apparently another individual who is a huge fan of the Turtles. In fact, he lobbied to be a part of this movie and got to play a very obscure character from the comics named McNaughton. Mine Noji got the honor of being the first person to portray Karai in a live action film. Tohiro Masamune is the actor who portrays Shredder in the film. Now, originally, William Fichtner's character of Eric Sachs was actually going to be Shredder. His name was supposed to be an anglicized version of Oroku Saki. Now, what's interesting and the reason why they changed this is the year prior, Iron Man 3 came out, where it got so much hate for the change of the Mandarin to end up being just this random white guy. So they completely scrapped it and they added new scenes to the film to make it seem like there was a separate character who was Shredder. Now, technically, Baxter Stockman was originally in this film. He was going to be played by K. Todd Freeman, but they ended up cutting out all of those scenes and they then brought the character back for the sequel, where it was actually played by Tyler Perry. Bebop and Rocksteady were supposed to make an appearance in the first film as martial arts soldiers that were given mutagen and turned into monster super soldiers. But instead of limiting their appearance, they decided to wait for a potential sequel, and then they introduced them then. Casey Jones was also supposed to be a huge part of the first film, but they decided to push him back for the sequel. Krang was also supposed to make a small cameo in the first film, but once again another character that they waited for the sequel. Ernie Reyes Jr., who played the character of Kino in the second live-action Turtles film, actually pitched a stunt video to Michael Bay to serve as a martial arts consultant on this film, but Bay ended up turning him down. There's a nice little nod to the creators of the original Turtles comic book series, as on The Art of Ninjutsu, the creator of that book apparently was Eastman Laird. At one point in the film, Eric Sachs mentions that they were testing the mutagen on rabbits. This is supposed to be an homage to the character Usagi Yojimbo, who would team with the Turtles very often in the comics. The assault van in the movie is supposed to be an homage to the Turtle Van, so much so that when they beep the horn, it actually plays the theme song to the classic cartoon series. Another homage that ended up being cut from the film was when April and Raphael are on their way to go find Vern. Raphael is actually wearing a trench coat and hat, just like he did in the first film. In the original live action trilogy, the mutagen was made by TGRI. In this film, it's TCRI, which is what they used in the original comics. Speaking of comics, the origin used in this film is very closely based on the one that was used in the IDW version of the Turtles comics, where April is a lab assistant who actually names the turtles. There is a fun little nod to other pop culture locations, as Michelangelo says that their lair is like the Fortress of Solitude, Hogwarts, and even Xavier Academy. One of the best moments in the film definitely has to be the beatboxing in the elevator, and apparently this was only lightly encouraged, but it was improvised. The original concept for this movie was that the turtles were going to be aliens from Dimension X, and Shredder was also going to be an alien who grew spikes. I am really thankful they did not end up going that way. Now, while the potential sequels to the animated 2007 movie were in developmental hell, there was actually a pitch for one more chance of a live action movie before it was sold off to Nickelodeon. This idea would have actually taken place right after the first movie from the 90s, and it would have made it so that the other two sequels just didn't exist. No idea what the actual plot would have been for that, though. So when it comes to this rendition of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a very good job of updating it, and I also liked the characters and the plotline. Some things were a little weird, but I still did enjoy it. So I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, Splinter bribes the turtles with a special cheese pizza. How many cheeses does it have? So I have no idea how this would even physically be possible, and I definitely feel it would have been a deep dish and not look like this, but apparently it was 99 different types of cheese. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.